Okay then. Okay, so I'll start talking about some of my pictures here. What happens is that I work at Oxfam and I go to these quite nice art and design shows at Clerkenwell, like the Clerkenwell Design Festival, and I also go to Earl's Court and I get all these quite nice, here's an example, little free booklets and magazines, and here inside we've got about 50 different designs, the latest designs of chairs and tables. And what I also get is this nice magazine called Hotels and Hospitalities, and it's all showcasing the latest award-winning interiors and designs. And what I kind of like to do is I like to I'm quite interested in this idea of entropy and decay in art and in the art objects, and I quite like to get them, and then I imagine them into sort of state where they're being chucked out. They're about 10 years, the latest designer table has been chucked out, but it's not old enough to be an antique, so it's been dumped. And I quite like the idea of these sort of landscapes. And in this one, it came from a Spanish hotel, and it was in hotels and hospitality, but it's all been flooded, and I'm thinking about global warming here. And to me it looked like a sort of Turner-esque really, and also it had a sort of ship in the window, and I sort of quite like the idea of taking these landscapes or taking these photographs from these magazines and sort of putting them underwater in the future. And this one's called Font, and it's from a table which is called the Rio table, and it's sort of got a basket network design, and I like the idea of it being dumped and then leaving shadows, and the shadows are almost like the web of life, and it was quite an ecological painting. And the hotel is on the American coastline, but a lot of these areas they're actually going to have to leave to go underwater when climate change comes along. So I quite like putting into the future and this sense of entropy and decay through time, and these buildings falling apart in the future. And the top one here comes from it's called Podcast, and it comes from this sort of office furniture pods that I saw at the design festival, but I imagine that sort of being left out to sea, and it was also a little bit to me like the raft of the Medusa as well. So that's something I like to do with my work, is I like to sort of take pictures from magazines and sort of put them into the future. So that's something I'd like to do there.
When did you start painting?
Oh, I started a long time ago. I've done it since my childhood, and I went to Anglia Polytechnic University, which is now Anglia Ruskin University. So I got my degree there, so I have been doing it for a long time. Yeah.
You were painting for a long time before you went to university.
I went to university in my early 30s. I was a mature student, so yes, I was painting. I did a foundation course, and I did art A level and O level as well. So yes, I did. I have been painting really as long as I can remember.
I mean, what, 4 years old, 5 years old?
Oh yes, yeah. I always liked drawing and painting from a young age. Yeah.
So what were you doing? Just like when you were like 4 and 5 years old. What were you doing?
Okay. I used to like doing dogs. I used to like doing cartoon dogs and things like that. I remember doing those when I was a little kid. So yeah.
And where are those paintings now?
I think they've gone long gone. I don't think they're around anymore. But yeah, so that's something I used to do. So anyway, we could talk about other pictures up here. There's another one I did. It was to do with I had a very bad time with COVID. What happened was my friend died, and it was a liver problem. It wasn't a liver infection just before COVID, so it wasn't COVID. But then we had lockdown, then my mother died as well. So one of the things I did, if you can see it just behind you, It's using a bit of collage, if you can see. It was that one there. It's I had an idea of doing a sculpture garden, and it was like for my it was sort of thinking about my friends and family who had died, and I had this little necklace at Oxfam, and it came in. It had a sort of heart, black heart sort of pendant, and also a butterfly pendant as well. And I looked at it and I thought it looked a little bit like just behind it looks like an Anish Kapoor. So I thought I might as well make a sculpture garden. And I looked at his work in the magazine at the Palace of Versailles. And I liked one of his sculptures, which was like a sort of mirror that's reflecting back up to the sky. So, so I did a series of pictures on that sculpture garden, and another one. It was like a cut-out butterfly on the necklace, and I used that to make a sort of relief sculpture. And I put figures in it who sort of represented my family. They weren't portraits of my family, but they represented my family. And my niece died of cancer when she was 22, so I did one for the butterfly for her. And again, it was that pattern, the shadows. It was called Complex Shadows, and it was the pattern of the butterfly sculpture. It was like a sculpture, and it was leaving a pattern of the shadows, and it sort of represented the complexity of cells, and how they can turn cancerous, and how difficult it is, but also the beauty of nature as well with it. So it was working through my feelings. And then I did another one. I had these old earrings, which are broken gold earrings, but I sort of thought they looked a bit like Barbara Hepworth, and I used to work at Kettle's Yard as well. So I did this little boy chasing the ducks, and I think that's up there. And there's one with the ducks is paddling underwater, and it was thinking of my dad, because he used to wear a tinsel jacket. He had a hair stuck called the DA, which was duck's arse. So there's the duck's arse sticking out of the water, and things like that. So I did a sculpture garden, but I like to use a bit of collage in my work as well. And I sometimes find things, and I did another one which was an earring. It was like an earring of a little owl, and it was silver, and it was in the street, and I thought it looked nice, like a sort of stained glass window. So I think that's behind you, it's owling window. It's the little one just there. And it was the one above that one, I think, yes. And I used that as like a sort of stained glass. And there was also a picture in the garden of Athena, who's the goddess of wisdom and military statecraft, and also the women's arts of needlework. And she's Athena, and I was looking at sculptures of Athena in a book, and she was holding a reconstruction of the statue, holding a Nike, a winged figure of victory, because she was like the goddess of, winning a battle. But she was also the goddess of shipping and sailing, and the sailors used to sort of make offerings to her for a safe journey. And so I changed it to a red animal butterfly, so she's like holding a butterfly. But in that painting, I sort of wanted to. I really love David Hockney, and he did pictures of people, portraits in their gardens with their art collection. But I like the idea of the man is a sort of silhouette in the painting, and it was meant to look like somebody might have seen the owl in the tree in the painting and said, "Oh, I'm going to take a photograph of that," but you were sort of blanked out by the light behind you. So it was challenging that idea of man being like in possession of the garden or ownership. I was hoping to do in that picture, sort of the man's passing through, and the goddess has been around, and nature will be around a long time, longer than man is, sort of thing. So that's another thing I like to do. I'm very interested in sort of environmental themes in my work.
And for how long have you been interested in?
Oh, quite a long time, really. I mean, I like sort of nature and the environment, so I sort of try to make it the sort of theme of my work. And
Okay, because you were starting from dogs at the age of 4.
Yeah.
Just going back to that.
I used to like animals and wildlife, and I used to read Willard Price, who, the tied with Adventure when I was a kid, and I also like reading J.G. Ballard, who's a great writer, and I think the environments and ecologies is the issue of our time, really, so I quite like to do environmental pictures.
Did you read the Rudyard Kipling Just So stories?
I did, I think, yeah.
I know
you did some work from that as well, didn't you? Yeah.
I just thought that now, because I know this interview's about you, but
yeah.
I did those Just So stories, and it just occurred to me, if you've got any work on that theme, we could do a joint publication.
Oh, we could do. I did do lots of animal prints with you as well, didn't I? As well, and also I'm looking at other works. There's this one called Visions in Blue, and I also like watching Novara Media, and I was watching the Owen Jones show, and the Israelis had invaded, or another incursion into Gaza, and there was this Palestinian girl saying, if you're an artist, what can you do to help? And she said, if you're an artist, do work for Palestine. If you're a musician, do music. And I thought I'd take up that call, and I was reading Jonathan Friedland in The Guardian, and of course what happened was Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. He tried to create peace in the region in the Oslo Accords in '93, and he was assassinated. And Jonathan Friedland actually visited Yitzhak Rabin's daughter, and he saw his blood-stained shirt and a sort of notebook where he had the lyrics to a song. So I thought I was going to do a portrait of them, Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat and Bill Clinton signing the peace accords, and I was going to call it Visions in Blue after the Ultravox song. And this song was written a long time before this, it was just a love song, but I thought the words were very appropriate. And I also wanted to do a picture that was about the contrast between this sort of nice modernist interior, because one of the things is that the Palestinians, they can't get licences for building materials. Well, there's a lot of illegal settlement building going on in the region, so I wanted to sort of use this thing of the glass and steel table, which is very a modernist cliche, with the sort of Picasso print behind it. And I took it, so it was sort of linking up the things of maybe Picasso's blue period as well. So I was looking at Richard Hamilton's. It comes straight from Richard Hamilton's painting War Games, and where this was about the Gulf War that he did, and it was a painting of Newsnight. They had this thing called the sand bit where they would move models around to show where the tanks were in the Gulf, and he did a painting of that, and it looks quite dated because it's like all the old video cassettes underneath it, and then you look under the TV, there's this blood dripping down the television. So I sort of took it straight from that. So that's another painting I did as well. So and then I also like going out sketching a lot, and I did some work along the railway line. There's do lots of sketches along there and make paintings out of those, and I'm quite interested in urban nature as well and things like that.
I'm going to keep going back, to your beginnings in art.
Yeah.
And you started off saying you want to do animals and nature, and it seems that since then it's developed into a much more sort of complex thing behind each painting.
Yeah.
I was wondering is that a gradual thing, or did that start all of a sudden?
I think it's a gradual thing that happened. It is quite gradual, I think. Yeah.
Because I think you're probably, as far as I know, the most prolific artist I know. I mean, you're always working, always sketching, every day doing. For how long have you been doing this much work?
Well, I try to keep busy with it. I try to keep it up. I mean, I just try to keep practicing at it as much as I can. So I do make quite a lot of paintings.
So going back, how long have you been doing so much? I mean, it is
I do other work as well in retail. Yeah, I've been doing this since I was about 15, 16.
And where is it all?
Well, most of it's, you've got a lot of it here, a lot of it's mine, it's, I do.
But we must be talking thousands of drawings, thousands of paintings.
I've got some of it's at my home. I think some of it might be at my parents', I don't know where it all is, but I try to keep drawing and sketching as much as I can. I do other jobs as well, so working in retail. So
how do you find working in retail?
Well, it's I have to sort of pay the rent, and I find it quite dull sometimes and quite stressful. I like working at Oxfam though, because I like the idea of recycling, and I also you get interesting things coming in as well. So
what interesting?
Well,
things?
like the necklace, the pendant that I made a sculpture garden out of. that sort of thing. You get odd items that you can use as a bit of collage in pictures as well. So
does that happen often that you
I look at something comes in and I think, I could make something out of that. I can make a picture with it or a painting with it. Yeah.
There's a lot of story behind each of your paintings.
I sort of have lots of. You see, I have quite a lot of themes going on in them, and yes, there are really quite a lot of stories going on with them. I quite like that picture there. Actually, I really like science fiction painting, and one of the things, I've got lots of science fiction art books, but like a book on Jim Burns, say, but I don't always read the science fiction books with them. So I like the idea of almost doing like a cover for a book, but the book hasn't been written. So you say we're going to call it, because it's Anish Kapoor, so I'll call it Fantaheart, but what's going on in the story? So there's a sort of couple at the table, they could be having an affair, you don't know. So it's, you can make the story up around it. So I quite, like that idea of people looking at it and, maybe making up a sort of story or thinking of, and especially with these type of environmental ones, they're very much like the Ballardian landscape, and I like romantic rooms of the future, that's how I sort of view them. So, yeah.
What made you do a degree in art at that age? How old were you when you started your degree?
Well, I did do A levels, and then I sort of worked. I did an art foundation course, and then I sort of went back to college, and I did a degree in studio art and art history, and so I really enjoyed it, and I've just tried to keep painting in the meantime, and I also did other sort of evening classes and other in the meantime, and then I got back into college again.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering, why did you do that?
Well, I just wanted to keep painting.
But you were doing it anyway.
Yeah, I just felt I just felt. I met my partner, and he said, why don't you sort of try. He was at college at the uni at Anglia, and he said, why don't you try and get in? And I did, and it was great, and I really enjoyed it at the time. Yeah.
So have you always worked in retail?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Well, since my A levels, I have done part-time work in retail as well, and I think that gave me quite an interest in recycling, and you do get to see the amount of stuff that comes through the checkouts, and quite material stuff coming through. You do get a sense of how much. You go to the shop and you buy a tin of baked beans, but you see how many baked beans people actually consume. It gave me an interest in like ethical consumerism and investment and environmental activism as well. So I supported Occupy and took part in some climate change demonstrations and things as well. So you do see how much, and also how much waste there is as well. You see that on quite a large scale if you work in retail. So you do see how much of our resources we're using.
I unpacked your laundry bag today and took out your paintings and I've put them up on the wall.
Yeah.
But I found a few books in there.
Yeah, I only brought the books along, to show where I get my sort of references from. Can I, if you pass me the book on here, these books? Yes.
We'll do one at a time, shall we?
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk about that one?
Yes, this is some of, you see, one of the things I did with this picture, Visions in Blue, is that I had a sort of book, this is Noam Chomsky and Anarchism. I like reading him, and he did one on Palestine, and the flag on the front of the book is a bit like this one. Look, I copied it so it's reflected on the table there. I was just going to show where I've got some of my sources from, and I can show the Richard Hamilton one as well.
I mean, Noam Chomsky, he's quite... Do you want to introduce him?
Well, he's a great writer. He's considered one of the greatest intellectuals of our time. He really does, have a brain the size of a planet. He's a great writer. Yeah, on international affairs and.
Well, because I know him as a socialist. Is that right?
Yes, so he is very much. But he's a sort of anarcho-syndicalist, you would say. But if you pass me the other one, I can show you the Richard Hamilton picture that I got. Yeah, I got this one from because I wanted to. Yeah. 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 So you can see this is the painting that I got that picture from. I took it straight from this painting, War Games. So, yeah. And Richard Hamilton is one of my favourite artists.
How did you come across Richard? Because he was one of the New York pop artists.
Well, he was an English pop artist.
Right.
Yes, he was. I really like his work. Yeah.
There was also.
Yeah, I was just going to show that because I was given an idea of. I got this because I was looking for a photo, taking pictures. Photo sources to take to do paintings from, and I was with this one I was actually looking for a picture of Yitzhak Rabin and I couldn't find one in the Guardian, so I sort of rethought the whole thing on the Richard Hamilton painting, and I was just going to make a point about the difference between going online for an image and taking one that's already been seen in a newspaper by thousands of people, and whether, when I was thinking about the use of mass reproduced imagery, whether the fact that we can get online and get images on the internet, whether that's changing the sort of currency of images and how pop art today might respond to that, slightly different, because when Richard Hamilton was working they didn't have the internet, and he would have taken an image from the newspaper, or Peter Blake might have taken an image from the newspaper, made a painting out of it, everyone would have seen it before, rather than people individually going online and researching imagery. So I was just going to make that point about that painting, and why I took it from Richard Hamilton in the end.
Do you feel a closeness to pop art?
I do, actually. I think if you work in retail, I do feel a closeness. I like the way they subverted consumerism. I mean, not all of them did. Obviously, Andy Warhol perhaps didn't, but some of them were really quite subversive, and they took in, the fact that they could take advertising imagery and they could subvert that type of consumerism and make us examine it. And the thing about advertising imagery is that we don't really take any notice of it. I mean, we go out every day on the bus, it just goes past us and we don't really look at it, but they were really interested in deconstructing it. And of course there's a great feminist movement with it, all the advertising that was gendered and aimed at women as well. So yes, if you work in retail, you sort of get aware of consumerism and advertising imagery. Yeah, I think there's another one there behind you, of the owl, again, like the owl picture there. That came from actually Gary Newman. I like John Fox, and I like Gary Newman, and it was called This Is Who You Are. So he sings a song on his Savage album, he sings This Is Who You Are, and it's like the owl. And also there's the car behind it, but again the car got from the magazine advert, and I added all the rust and took the wheels off, you know, so it was this sort of flashy cars video in the 80s, and it's all about entropy and the, you know, the cars being dumped, and then there's the pylons, our friends Electric, and the glass, smashed glass as well. So it's a reference to Gary Newman. I sort of quite like make pop song references as well in my work a bit. Yeah.
And that's not something you hear a lot, the idea that pop art wasn't just some era in art in the 80s, is something that is always with us. I mean, there's always advertising, there's always pop art.
Yes, it would, you know, pop art really came about in the 60s, it was a 60s thing, you know, really, but it's always gone on in the 80s as well.
And would you say pop art even existed before the 60s? I mean, there's always been advertising.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying about the Richard Sickert exhibition, and they said he was perhaps the father of pop art, and he was sort of talking with me about that, because he took images from the newspapers and made paintings out of them, and it's how we responded to the mass reproduction of imagery.
And all those Russian political posters under Stalin, would you put that in the same sort of...
There's a sort of propaganda art. Pop art might not be in quite the same category.
What would you see as the difference?
Well, the propaganda art was there as mass reproduction for the pop art. I mean, that was their own advertising, really. That was their own advertising, you know, although they didn't have a capitalist system, that was their own advertising, really. That was the government advertising. It was so the image of the worker, you know, and you know, that sort of the strong worker working on the field. It was all sort of their own sort of propaganda. So there's a difference, really. But you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, to take a mass reproduced image with a message, propaganda, or whether it's about selling cars, and I'm quite interested in subverting it, or when you sort of redo it, you're deconstructing it to some extent, you're looking at it again. Yeah, so I'm quite interested in that.
So pop art as a kind of alteration of the source, rather than just like, for example, the Russian propaganda, which was just political.
Yes, it's taking what's around us and using it. I mean, you know, it's
specifically in popular culture, would you say?
Popular culture, or in advertising, imagery, magazine images. This is what they did, and it was responding to the mass reproduction of images. That's the whole point. I mean, you know, it's mass reproduction.
Do you see a lot of that still going on today?
Oh yes, very much so.
Do you know any specific artists? Because there's you. I mean, you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's Banksy, I would say, to some extent, is doing that too. I mean, yeah, graffiti art, yeah. I mean, it is responding to the mass reproduction of images and creating another image out of it. And even works of art like Banksy's take on Constable with the pastoral landscape as well. He's sort of done that too. So, yeah.
There's also this calendar of endangered species.
Yeah, so I was just going to talk about that, because there was one I did of the tiger, and I think, I don't know, it's probably behind me here. And I wanted to talk about ecology because, oh, there it is. Yeah, it's in there. It's not. It's a bit further. But I know Tracy Emin, they had a sort of appeal for the elephants, and you know, she did a drawing of a baby elephant, and obviously baby elephants are adorable, but the trouble is with this type of conservation, when you're focusing on one species, you'd find that it's the sort of big tigers, and it's that's the image I took it from. It's the World Wildlife. I mean, it's a bit like the panda bear. I think Chris Packham actually criticised the campaign to save the panda, because he said that money could be better used elsewhere. And really, the panda bear, I mean, it has very limited diet, it has a very limited breeding period, and it probably only survives because basically it looks like a beautiful teddy bear, doesn't it? And everyone thinks they're gorgeous, and I go, oh, how cute, but really, perhaps we should be concentrating on areas of land. And,
so with the panda, is it more the case that we've stopped them going extinct rather than threatening them with extinction?
Well, we really should, I think what Chris Backer was saying, I think we should really be concentrating on the habitats and areas of land and whole ecosystems, really, rather than just one species type conservations, because certain species have a lot more appeal than others. I mean, with a campaign, to say, like, there's no creepy crawlers, or
Save the rat.
Well, save the dung beetle, or, that wouldn't really have the same appeal. But the thing is that they could be just as important in an ecosystem as the top apex predator type thing. So that's what I sort of did that painting, and also it's called Just Be Still. And I like the idea, though, of a still is another word for photograph, and it comes from David Bowie's song Cat People, and Just Be Still with me, and he obviously took it from William Blake's The Tiger as well. So I like that sort of taking the image, but so if someone's coming across it into the forest and just don't move, just be still, can you see it, sort of thing, and just be still, also only being remembered in an old photograph species. That's quite sad as well. So I was looking at that. Yeah.
I just want to talk about your painting in terms of its colours, how it looks, because you wouldn't think from what you've been saying so far that your paintings would look like this. Just the way you paint them, the colours you consistently seem to stick with. And where did that all come from?
Well, I do like colour, and I do.
Because your paintings have a certain colour palette consistently across them, like that kind of purpley, dark Prussian blues.
Yeah. I like contrasting colours. I really don't like these sort of sepia type landscapes. I don't really like black and white pictures. I mean, I think some, I really do like. I don't really like monochrome type work. I like really, because everything you see is often, when you look around you, you see often very contrasting blues and oranges, colours around you, greens, reds. I don't have a. I really like colour, really, and different colours.
Well, just that takes you onto your monochrome work.
Yeah.
The block printing you've been doing.
Oh yes, I mean, if you're doing printmaking, that's different. I mean, obviously, even then I try to allow up a certain amount of colours, but when it comes to painting, I really like to use quite strong contrasting colours. I don't like these sort of tasteful, grey wash type landscapes. I mean, there's a place, it used to be called Castle Galleries, and sometimes I get the catalogue just to, I do not want to paint, how to look at it and say, I do not want to end up painting like this, and it is sort of rainy New York taxi, sort of tasteful, different shades of monochrome greys, and I don't want to be that tasteful. I like this sort of contrasting, make colours look real.
I first met you in 2009 when you came to an exhibition at a flat Shelley and I were living in Edgeworth Green.
That's right, yeah.
And you showed me some of your work.
Yeah.
And then you joined our art group at the time, the other Muswell Hill Stuckists. Yeah. And then we started Black Ivory Printmaking and Audio Club.
Yeah.
Is that sort of done anything for you, do you think, specifically?
Oh, a great deal for me, I really do, I really do. I was really at a loose end when I left college. I had an art degree, and, I did another course about museum work, and, I still worked in retail, but I was just at a loose end what to do, and I didn't, you see, when I was at college also, it was all like Brit Art. It was all the sensation show, and we were all expected to go and see it, and I wasn't really that interested in it. And to be honest, I liked it, when you looked at the Turner Prize, and it was all that scene, of the Brit artists, and I really, got sort of fed up with this. I just wanted to paint really, like a lot of artists do. So stuccoism really was great. I think it was a great antidote to all that really. You know, I didn't. And also when you're at college, they always have this idea that you're there, you start drawing and painting because you're good at art, and then you let your progression of your art should go towards the conceptual, towards conceptual artwork. And I don't think that at all. I think why not just paint and get better at painting throughout your lifetime? But your art progression should be for going from the figurative drawing to painting to being a conceptual artist. And even the whole story of art is always about going towards abstraction and conceptualism, and you know, I don't like that either. And I think a lot of artists are going back to painting now anyway, and even the artists who are the Brit artists, you know, they'll say, oh, well, I've been painting for years now, apparently. So, you know, that's, you know, it's painting is, you know, we're still painting. So I don't see that you should, you know, go from painting and drawing to conceptualise your progression as an art student at all.
Well, you seem like someone who doesn't really need to even engage with any of that anyway.
I've never felt...
You've managed your work independent. Well,
yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, most artists have to earn a living elsewhere, and I do in retail. I do sort of have to. So in a way, I like the freedom of stuccoism as well. I like being able to just paint really, and you know, I mean, people like my work and want to buy it. That's great, but you know, it is. I like the sort of freedom, and I also like the fact the Stuckers manifesto when they say it's art about life rather than art about art, because I really want to get away from that sort of picture where you know, you have to have freedom, you know, it's hung in the Tate and you don't know what it's about, and you have to read 3 paragraphs to work out what's going on. I mean, I really want people just to come and say, oh, look at that, even if it was a little kid, you know, oh, I like the colours, or look at that, without necessarily knowing what's going on. Or if you don't get what it's about, just, you know, if you haven't communicated what it's about, you know, if you need 3 paragraphs to explain what's going on, then don't, you know, start again. It's like, you know, just start going with it, you know, then, you know.
Well, yeah, that's it. It works as art anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, you've given quite detailed descriptions about these paintings,
yeah.
which I didn't know any of it, but it doesn't actually make me like them any more or less anyway.
Yeah, that's
on
the
an
main
artistic
thing.
level.
Yeah,
that's what I'm interested in.
I mean, the only thing is with some, I mean, you know, especially, you know, Visions in Blue, that one, it did have to have a bit of an explanation about what it was about.
Well, I don't think it does.
Well,
I think it's
yeah.
good. I mean,
yeah, about the sort of political side to it.
I mean, I think it's a good painting anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but there's some. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think, and if you fail to communicate what it's about, then perhaps. And the other thing is I'm quite interested in the art object a bit as well, because I like the idea of it being dumped and it's the art object actually being chucked out. And I must say, I don't really like Cornelia Parker's work at all. I did see her exhibition, but you see, the trouble with conceptual art, I mean, in her case, I think it's all trying to get away from the art object, the beautiful painting that you put on your wall and then you end up being more obsessed with it than ever. And especially in her case, it had little smudges on one piece of paper, and she did it from sort of polishing the silver. But the thing was, one of it was on, say, Winston Churchill's whiskey decanter, one of them was on Henry VIII's seal or something. They all belong to famous people in history, and to me it just, you know, the fact that they used these items, to her was the whole point. And she did one with Marilyn Monroe's dress. She bidded for it online, but you know, if you want, you know, I never work in a charity shop. If you want to get a dress from a charity shop, you know, the fact it belonged to Marilyn Monroe is the whole point of it, you know, then you're not really getting away from the art object at all. So, you know.
Well, and the thing is, it's such an illustration that all art has a concept to it. The question is, does it work without the concept?
Yeah, exactly.
And conceptual art doesn't, and I think your work highlights probably clearer than anyone else's.
Well, the thing is, another thing that Stucker's manifesto I do like is that all art is conceptual except conceptual art, I think, yeah, to some extent. I mean, so, that's another thing I like in the manifesto too.
When did you hear about stuccoism? Because
I saw it was online, and I saw pictures of the Turner Prize protest.
was that
as well.
before you came round our house?
Oh yeah, it was long before. That was
right.
1999. So that was, and then so that's long before that. So
Did you get, because you go to quite a lot of exhibitions, did you ever go to the Stucky shows in the old days?
I didn't so much. It was only around 2009 onwards that I joined, and then I started going.
So our show was the first Stucky show.
Yes, it was. Yes, and I really sort of wanted to sort of get involved with stuccoism at that point. Yeah, because I was. Yeah.
It's because I don't remember you mentioning that, because
Yeah.
it's kind of good how it's all worked out.
It is really, yes, it is, yeah.
Anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I just wanted to mention I did do artwork about life, the one behind you there, life on other planets, and it's meant to be about life on a planet with a red dwarf star, and I quite like watching these sort of science videos and Brian Cox and stuff like that, and I'm sort of imagining a life on a red dwarf with a red dwarf star. Firstly, we've got a yellow giant sun, which will take 12 billion years for the hydrogen to sort of use up its fuel, but a red dwarf star will have a trillion years. It's because it takes a lot longer to burn up its fuel. On the other hand, it doesn't put out quite as much light and heat, so if there's life there, one theory is that the plants will be black or dark, very dark green or black, because they have to have a lot of chlorophyll, which they use to photosynthesize, so they'd be very dark green, black. And I quite like the idea of doing the plants in a sort of no man's zone. Yes, because the other thing is the planet would be what we call tidally locked. It would be one light side facing the sun, its star, and the rest on the dark side in permanent darkness. But I saw it more as a metaphor at the time between the haves and have-nots in our society. It was, and I called it the manic small black flowers that grow in the sky. You know, from that, and those who seem to be born on the sort of wealth, and those who are born in sort of poverty, and the contrast between them. And I think you can say all the parties were happening right on the light side of the planet, as we now know, and as opposed to the dark side. So it was more of a metaphor for life on Earth. But I did do one which was more scientifically accurate, I thought, called Pine, and that's behind me as well. So that was another one I did, yeah. So that's it then.
One thing I don't know if I asked you before, but you said a lot of your childhood work's been disposed of.
I don't think it's still around. Yeah.
How far back have you actually got?
I really don't know. I don't know. I think something might be at my family's house when they was clearing up the loft. I don't know. I just keep what I've done more recently.
Would it look similar to this?
No, not really, not at all.
What would it look like?
Well, it will just be like childhood drawings, really. Childhood. I mean, I do remember when I was a child, when I was 13, I did go to the local college and did drawings and sketches of trees, and I was quite good at art. And I always sketched trees and nature, and it might look a bit similar, but I hope it's moved a bit since then. So, yeah.
And how was art college for you?
Well, this is it. I mean, I liked being at college, and I liked it there. But again, I started doing sculpture, and then I went on to printmaking, which I much prefer printmaking to sculpture. But I did feel that it was. I did feel it was quite. As I say, it was all at the time of the sensation show of Brit Art, and it was sort of like this is where we should all be taking our cue from, and this is what we should all be into. And I felt I wasn't really into that at all. And the trouble is I've always loved science fiction painting so much, and I much prefer that anyway. So it's like you have your sort of art education, and then you go and sort of work you really like. You start looking. You've got your own collection of science fiction painters, and I did actually do my dissertation on June Burns, so that's what I did at college, and that was quite good. That was very interesting.
So even though you kind of rejected what they were saying, they did allow you to do your own thing?
Yeah, they did. They did allow me to do a dissertation on science fiction painter Jim Burns.
And how were they when they realised that you were going to do your own path and you weren't going to do theirs?
Well, it wasn't a great sort of big argument. So, I mean, I did have one terrible drawing tutor, but well, the thing was, in fact, perhaps she was more Puritan, but I think she was a pupil of Giacometti, or she knew Giacometti, and she had a very, by the time you're at college, especially as a mature student of mine, you got used to drawing, you've got your own style, but she kept saying, oh, you've got to draw in this particular way, and like Giacometti, and I knew I was going to I just enjoyed it actually. I knew I was going to get a low mark, and I did. I passed it, and I just spent the time drawing and enjoyed it. But I knew, that some people had walked out of her, her sort of lessons.
Well, so were other students drawing like Giacometti for her?
No, of course not. I think some walked out, but they were sort of trying very much to. But this was just one tutor though. She wasn't, it's just that she had a very sort of precise way of drawing, is that this is how you have to learn how to draw, and, I think by that time I'd already sort of quite got used to doing my own style. I think by that time you should have developed your own style anyway, so.
I think Giacometti would have liked your work a lot.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Have you seen the video of him drawing Stravinsky?
I haven't, no.
How he does the line for the centre of the face and the eyes.
Yeah.
And then he does very light, gradual strokes, and as he kind of hones in, he gets thicker and thicker. Is that what she was telling you to do?
Sort of. I mean, it was like, mark this little point in space, mark that point in space type sort of thing, and I couldn't really do that. I mean, we did actually use the hand model. We had our own little life drawing class at the college as well, but people could turn up, and that was quite good, So,
has any kind of tutoring you've received actually been beneficial?
Well, I mean. Well, I mean, at the college, it was more of a case of, I did have some very good actually art history teachers there, and it was more of a case of just getting through it really. I enjoyed it, and the printmaker was quite good. The printmaking was very good. I learned how to do etching, which I really enjoyed. I do that and the techniques in etching, and he was someone who actually used to let you work out how to do it yourself, because he didn't really tell you exactly how to do things. And the other thing, he would say, we used to be able to, you have to use like a block, when you put the plate in the acid, you have to use blocks, and you used to have to use this wax, and it would take a long time to dry, but he said, well, you could use car spray, you could use masking tape, you could just use what you like, and he really let you. I mean, one thing I did was I used to get some old dishcloths and press them in, and you get quite a nice effect, and they always look like a coral reef. I did a load of prints like a sort of coral reef structures and stuff, fancy landscapes with it. It was great fun. He would let you get on with it, he would. Yeah, he would let you experiment quite a bit, and and then how he said you have to work that one out. I think when you do something yourself, you learn it a lot better. I mean, you've largely done printmaking, haven't you? Because you've worked out how to do things yourself. Yeah.
And that's how, when Charles was here, that's how he did it. Well, he taught himself, didn't he?
Yeah, you can. Yes, he had to do it.
He just worked out a way of making his own prints.
and he did really well with it. Yeah.
He came up with some phrase like offset something.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, I like to think. I know it's just the way you're describing your experience of art college sounds to me how I imagine you experience Black Ivory printmaking and audio club, in a way that you are pretty much just left on to do your own thing.
Well, in a way,
with some sort of camaraderie.
One good thing was that it was modular, so you could get points as you went along towards your degree. So And I know someone else who went to art college, and she told me that she still had nightmares about 3 or 4 years later about getting her art show for the finals. And you were just given your own little space, and you know you could work in that little space that you had to come in to work, and so mine was quite different there, you know.
So all I need to do is have a point system.
Well, what we'd do is every module would be, say, worth 20 points or 30 points for doing that module. So, and then you would get all the points added towards your final degree. So that was quite good. So you could sort of, it wasn't all like 1 week of absolute hectic rush where it had to be your final show, had to be judged, sort of thing. So that was quite good.
Well, I'm awarding you maximum points then, because you've been a student of Black Ivory.
Yeah, for quite a while. I know, I've really enjoyed it.
You've got 100 out of 100 in it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Done very well.
Okay, then, so that's great.
As have I. I've got 100.
Yeah.
We'll give Charles 100.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And the other people that came, we'll just give them 0.
Oh.
Because they fucking bowled out.
Okay, well. Okay then. Well, so is that anything else you want to do or at all?
I think that's it. I mean, thanks for doing the show.
Okay, then keep it up, and then that'd be great. Okay, so I'll switch off, shall we?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.